The best ability is availability. That's what I'm often told in my industry and in my world, and kind of in the world in general. The best ability is availability, but especially in sports media where you work event to event, and there can be random cancellations almost at any point, depending on what's going on in a certain person's life. This morning I woke up to a text, yesterday I got a voicemail, but this morning I woke up to a text, asked me if I can work a Mad Ants game tomorrow, and I initially said no, because I didn't want to. But then I realized I'm not doing anything. And come tomorrow, when I would be working, I would be either laying in bed or sitting up playing video games, and likely during that time kicking myself that I'm not working the Mad Ants game. So I made an adjustment, went back on my lie, and I'm not working the game tomorrow, which is the much better decision. And it's these kind of decisions that I think are what help pull me out of a funk or keep me from dropping into a funk. I had a much better week this week. No real drama, nothing real complicated. Although I worked an IUPUI men's game and I'm getting hot. Wearing this Germany jersey for the second week in a row. I promise I haven't worn it since last week when I filmed my podcast. Whatever. Let's ditch both. Pretty good week though. I did manage to work an IUPUI men's game where they played Detroit Mercy, and the all-time leading scorer in the Horizon League, Antoine Davis, played. And in that game, not only did he score 42 points, but he broke the record for second all-time in NCAA scoring, meaning he is now only behind Pistol Pete Maravich, 400-ish points behind Pistol Pete Maravich for the leading scorer all-time in NCAA history. Not only was I able to film that game, but if you were to go on ESPN and look up that article, the short article where they posted the clip of him breaking the record, you would see my camera angle as the replay. The camera angle, he's on the near side wing, he shoots a three, I widen out, I follow it to the basket, and then I snap back to him for the hero. I recorded that. And granted, it's a smaller thing, and a lot of people probably across the country maybe don't know that this guy did it, but it's a historical thing, and there's a good chance his record won't be broken for a minute. So, well, it's not a record, second place. Anyways, that was a pretty wild thing that happened this week. I'm pretty happy with that. That felt pretty good. It was really kind of an IUPUI week for me, working just a lot of men's games, or a few women's games, a few men's games, bouncing back and forth, and some high school basketball tossed in there, of course. An overall good week, shuddy, or people. Still no therapist. Need to work on that. If I don't have a therapist lined up, or at least made significant progress towards that by the next episode, I need one of you to punch me through the camera or something. I need to get on that. And I have plans in this moment right now to do that later today, but we'll see. You never know how these things play out. I need to go get some groceries later as well. I'm just telling you my to-do list at this point, but it's a pretty good week. The NFL playoffs are well underway. I don't have that much to add about the playoffs because, quite frankly, once my fantasy team is out of it, don't really care anymore. Fantasy football is really the only thing that brings me into football overall, other than the Super Bowl. But Joe Shiesty looks like he's on his way to back-to-back Super Bowls, and this time could be a Super Bowl champion if his offensive line decides not to crumble in the Super Bowl, like last year. Joe Shiesty may be one of the coolest players in the NFL right now, by the way. He's basically just me. Not really, but kind of. I think he's just a kid from Ohio. I'm just a kid from Indiana. I think maybe he's an inch taller than me or so. I'm basically trying to say I'm Joe Burrow, but I'm not. Joe Shiesty is a one of a kind. He is a king, a full-on king. I do like the imagery. So when he won the LSU national championship, he had the famous clip of him smoking a cigar in the stadium after they won the game. And I like the imagery or potential mirror imagery of him doing the exact same thing when he wins the Super Bowl, whenever that is, but assuming it's this year. That would be a nice thing to see. It's hard not to be a fan of Joe Burrow. I don't really know who hates Joe Burrow. He's a really likable guy. Stylish, cool, good at football. I also want to start reading more. That's another thing. I have 2 books on my desk. One's a Robin Williams biography, and another one is 60 Seconds How to Get Hired in a Minute or something like that. It's an interview tip book. I want to start reading more just because I play too many video games, kind of is the idea. I spend my days playing video games when that does nothing good for me at all. So if I'm not doing something that's directly productive, I might as well change that and make it a little bit more productive by reading some books that could potentially give me some knowledge or some different perspectives or things that can potentially motivate me or give me direction moving forward in my life, because that's what I'm lacking in this moment is long-term direction. Which maybe I don't need long-term direction right now because I'm just a 22-year-old grinding trying to figure out life, but I would like some more direction because I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants, which I famously said for a while that's what I'm doing, and that is what I'm doing, but again, maybe it's part of my current situation of sleeping on an air mattress or whatever, but I would like some sort of direction, a sort of path that I can look towards or follow, and I got nothing at this moment. I got nothing. Although there have been several plans with a few of my friends to potentially go to Europe at some point in the next 12 months with Jenna. My friend Jenna Hadley's been featured on the podcast. My friend Gage, as well as our friend Blaze. They mentioned the idea of going to Europe or going to England. And Jenna may even be moving to Europe with her aunt. So I have that to potentially look forward to in this year. Although both of those are slowly moving, very much up in the air. The nice thing about that is I'm a young guy, so I have nothing to vouch for or keep in mind other than myself. I have a few bills and things, but that's kind of it. So once I pay my taxes, whatever money I have left over, I can kind of spend however I want to. Not like I should burn through all of my cash because you need to save money as a young lad, but once I pay off my taxes and I start my investment accounts for long term and I make those contributions and I pay those dues, then I have X amount of money left over, which I would like to spend on getting me out of this area to a new part of the world that I have not seen before. That is probably the most valuable and the most important and the best way to spend my money. Because shoes are cool, soccer jerseys are cool, shirts are cool, but like, what do they really do for you long term? Not much. Not really much. I could get a different white t-shirt that costs less money than this and it'd be just as good. So traveling is the way. I was kind of low last week, kind of in a little rut, but this week helped a lot. Just, I mean, you swings and roundabouts, you go up and down. That's how moods go. But also, I very much enjoyed working this week. The games I worked were a lot of fun. I work with cool people that I like working with, people that kind of look out for me. Starting to make some real friends, or work friends at least, and that always feels good. So that's positive for sure. Damn, what was that other thing I was gonna say? I remember what it is now. So I'm currently living with my brother and his girlfriend, and they're in the midst of having a kid, and he's gonna have to move out here in the near future and sometime in March. And that means a lot for me. That means I have to move somewhere and I have to find a new place to live. And it's kind of been up in the air recently, but I finally have gotten a sort of solid path for a new place to live once that time comes. It's with a brother of a guy who used to be my boss when I worked at this popcorn place in Broad Ripple in Indianapolis last year when I was in college. So that feels good. It feels good to have that place lined up because that's been another thing that's kind of just been looming over my head that I haven't totally addressed. So to finally have at least one brick on the path feels good. Okay, back to the episode. I'm now going to do those chores, act on that to-do list that I mentioned, get some groceries, possibly find a therapist. But thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Procrastinator Podcast, or this, I call it the Procrastinator Podcast. It's constantly changing form, whatever. But thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I've been your host, Matthew Stein. You've been fantastic as always, of course. And I'll see you in next week's episode. There's a chance I check in even after this outro to remind you of the point that I forgot. But let's hope I have a therapist by next week. I better, to be honest with you. A lot of high school basketball coming up this next week, including a game of Miles Colvin, future Purdue basketball player. But, we'll see. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. So long. Stay warm, folks. Hey, Bear.